Okay, here we go. We are live. I am here with Mandy Dante, ready for our talk on Flourishing Girls. Who better to talk about that with than Mandy, the CEO of Flourish Girl. We'll just give people a minute or two to get organised. The thing that Mandy and I are going to have to be careful of on tonight's talk is that we just don't laugh the whole time, because we do have a tendency to laugh a lot when we talk, which is lovely. But,
it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. Welcome, Mandy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so honoured and excited to share this space with you and to everyone tuning in, and really excited for this conversation, a much needed conversation. So super pumped.
And we'd love to, in the chat box or in the comments or whatever platform you're watching on, please, if you could write your name and where you're watching from, that'd be great. We love to see who's out there, where they are, people that we know. It's really special. We get people watching from around Australia and sometimes from lots of other countries around the world. So that's great. And also just to say that as we are moving along, if people have comments or questions, also please post them, and where we can, we will address them and speak to them. So we'll give it about another minute before we get going. Where are you, Mandy? You're in Sydney, aren't you?
I'm in Sydney. Yes, it's been a rainy week over here, which, it's okay because my introvert self doesn't mind it because I wanted to stay inside. So it's nice over here. Is it rainy over there?
It is. I'm up in Byron and we are definitely in rain, heavy rain. I just emptied out my rain gauge. Had about 50 millimetres since last week.
Oh, wow.
And they're predicting heavy rain in the next couple of days and possible flooding. So I might actually get flooded in. And I always enjoy getting flooded in. The trick is to get flooded in, not flooded out. Because when you're flooded in, you get at home and just be at home, which is really nice. On the times when I've been flooded out, I have to find someone's couch to sleep on. And So the other thing is we're having spams in the comments. So please do not open any link that is not from the Rites of Passage Institute. Big warning, people are spamming us. So
that's wild. I didn't even know that's a thing.
It's quite complimentary that we're being spammed. But please do not open any comments that are not from the Rites of Passage Institute or ROPI. And thank you, Sarah Davies from Melbourne. Lovely to have you here.
Hi,
so
Sarah.
We're going to get started. And I'll start by paying my respect to the Indigenous elders of the land where I am, and the Arakwal people from the Bundjalung Nation have a tens of thousands of year history on this land, and I want to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
I'll also just jump in and also pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and I'm currently standing on Gadigal people land of the Eora Nation.
Thanks, Mandy. And we've been joined by my friend Marcus from Stockholm in Sweden.
Oh, wow.
Marcus did the leadership training that I ran in Denmark pre-COVID, 2018, and we ran our first Mother and Son program over there. We've got
I remember
Steve
that.
From London and Tim Moore, who's on the road in WA. So great to see people joining. It's my absolute pleasure tonight to introduce Mandy Dante, who is an extraordinary woman, and I'm very happy to say a great friend of mine who I've known. We're trying to work it out about 6 years now. And Mandy is the founder and CEO of Flourish Girl, and we're going to hear all about Flourish Girl tonight. And particularly, the aim of tonight is to have a discussion about, what do we need to do to support our girls to flourish, and why aren't they flourishing, and what more can we be doing? So, Mandy, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And first question I'd like to ask you is just a bit of your story. How did you get to be doing what you're doing?
Yeah. The good old question, where did it all begin? So I think for me, where it all started would definitely have been around 2016. So I started to, before that, actually, I think for me, growing up, going to an all girls school for most of my life, I think it was really easy for me. I looked like the happy, friendly girl that got along with everyone. And what people didn't see was, I was constantly insecure around my body. I know swimming was compulsory for us. So even just the thought of wearing a swimsuit, that really brought me a lot of anxiety, but I didn't have the language or the awareness to know that that's what it was. And also, I think with friends as well, I focused so hard on fitting in that I didn't actually do the things that I never was really honest with my friends. I never really spoke my truth. And I just constantly would bottle up how I was really feeling. And, on top of that, I went to a really academic school and, my background is Sri Lankan. So, my parents really sacrificed quite a lot to make sure that myself and my older sister would have a really good education. So on top of that, I was really stressed out because I wanted to make sure that I did well because I knew how much my parents sacrificed. So I think for me, just there was all these things bubbling beneath the surface. And I think, I just never really had a safe space to talk about it. And I think it was only after leaving high school when I started to reflect on my personal experience that I realized, oh, wow, if only there was a safe space to actually unpack these things and know that I'm not alone in what I was dealing with. And not only that is, there was friends in my year level. I remember girls were coming to school with bandages on their wrists from self-harming. And I would overhear conversations in my ancient history class around girls eating an apple a day to lose all this weight before formal. And I didn't quite understand why those conversations were being said. But I think it was only after leaving high school, I was like, oh, how can we prevent this thing from getting worse, mental health issues in teenage girls? So that's kind of led me down this path of what does it look like to create a safe space for girls? How can we create these spaces and let girls know that they're not alone in what they're dealing with and that they can actually, create community and create sisterhood and know that whatever they're feeling, it's so welcomed. And so that's what led me down the path of starting Flourish Girl in 2018.
Well, look, so first of all, fantastic, and about 20 things I want to talk to you about. So we'll just sort of mark them down. And for people who are just joining us, I'm here with Mandy Dante, who's the founder and CEO of Flourish Girl. And please write your name in the comments and where you're listening from. And also, we are being spammed, so please don't open any links that are not from Ropey or the Rites of Passage Institute at this stage. In fact, we'll tell you before we put up any links. And big shout out to Fiona from Wingham in New South Wales, who will also probably be experiencing a lot of rain at the moment as the low pressure system moves across the state. So, Mandy, just a couple of really important things for me that you said there. Even before that, what years are you talking about that it was challenging for you at school?
Great question. I would say it was between, what year was it? It was between year 7 to probably around year 10. And I think the awareness, those were probably the pivotal times. But then I think it was
year 7 it started? Year 7?
Year 7, yeah. Year 7.
Yeah. Year 7 to 10 were the difficult ones for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And what you mentioned about internalizing is so interesting, and I definitely want to find space to talk about that more because it's such a critical thing that seems to impact on so many girls. But I want to start by this thing of where you mentioned a couple of times about having issues, but I got the impression that you thought you were alone and that you were the only one who was struggling. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, I think, such a great question. I think for me, when I was younger, all that I would see around me is it looked like my friends were fine. Like everyone was just going through the motions. We went to school, we had recess, like we had our classes, we had recess, we spoke about things, and it just looked like everyone around me looked like they had it together. And I think because of that, it felt like, oh, no one else is probably feeling what's within me. So I'm not going to risk bringing this up, because if I bring it up, I don't know what's going to happen. Will this person leave me? Will this person, tease me later? Because growing up, and I think it's still so evident today, teenage years, it's such a pivotal time. And I remember it was in terms of connection and really building your identity. And I think anything that can risk or jeopardize that, you just want to avoid. So yeah, I definitely felt that in terms of feeling alone.
Right. So I'm hearing that not only do you feel alone, you didn't feel safe to share,
Yes.
which is hugely interesting.
Yeah.
You work a lot with girls. The first part of my work in this field is definitely a lot more with boys, and still, in fact, is. But I definitely found that with boys, it really seemed most boys were struggling on some level, and most of the boys thought that they were the only ones who were struggling. So definitely a similar theme going on with both boys and girls, feeling like they're the only ones who are having sort of issues, and around the ages between year 7 and year 10, which is what, 12 years of age to 15, 16 is definitely where this all seems to be. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And then after you finished school, you actually became a speech pathologist. Is that correct?
I did. Yes, you said it right. Yes, exactly. So yeah, I went straight. I didn't do a gap year or anything. I just went straight to, uni. So I went to the University of Sydney and I did a Bachelor of Applied Science in Speech Pathology. So yeah, I did that for 4 years, and then I would say at the beginning of my degree, I was unsure about it because there was a lot of science and maths, and I was like, no. But then as we progressed in the 3rd or 4th year, I did a lot more practical experience. So, I did a lot of pediatrics and adults. So, had pracs in hospitals to clinics out in Bankstown or in different areas across New South Wales. So, yeah, I fell in love with it in terms of connecting with the people, seeing them improve, and knowing that, I played a role in that. So I did love it at the time.
Well, this is a thing because you had a career, you'd been to university, you'd done, lots of years and lots of hard work, and you were already sort of starting to establish. In my experience, most people then make that the career for the rest of their lives, or a significant chunk of it. And it certainly takes it's a big move and a very brave scenario to say, right, I'm going to leave that and go to something that isn't really being done and has no certainty and no income and no job description, and I'm just going to go out and do it. So tell me a little bit about that move, Mandy. How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, talk about a rite of passage and a stage of transition in my life. I think, it was definitely scary and exciting. Like, it was all of it. I think for me, my faith is so important, and I'm a Christian, so for me, I believe everyone has a purpose and an assignment in their life, and I really felt that my assignment with speech pathology and serving children to have a voice, I felt like that was going to a close, and just really felt a real pull and passion towards young women. And I naturally just falling into spaces where I was just holding safe spaces for friends, but I didn't know I was doing it. But I think, my passion started to shift. So yeah, I definitely, you could say, took the leap of faith and decided that I was, why not pursue this if it's something that's really calling me? So yeah.
And looking at you now.
Look at me now.
Okay, so I always feel when we give talks, write books, do presentations, anything like that, we want to actually aim to get to the place of solutions, tips, support, ways that we can help people. But before that, I also think it's really important to identify what are the key issues that we're trying to deal with. And you speak to lots of girls. You spend lots of time with teenage girls. I understand you even have some girls on the inside who you have direct access to, who are of various ages. So I'm very interested to know, what do you think, what are the big issues and scenarios that girls are dealing with today?
Well, first of all, like, I definitely have to give credit where credit's due. And, you know, running this organization, I have such an incredible team of facilitators that actually are the ones that are on the ground now, going out into all the schools and creating these safe spaces. So I think some of them are tuning in tonight. So hello. And, you know, all of our facilitators do an incredible job with holding these safe spaces for over 6,500 teenage girls now. So yeah, I guess some of the things that I'm hearing is so many different things, right? Every teenage girl is different. You've got the quiet teenage girl to the loudest, charismatic, sporty girl. You know, there's such a spectrum of different types of teenage girls. And I think the biggest thing that it comes down to in terms of what is the biggest thing that's coming up for teenage girls is stress. You know, they're really stressed out, and they're stressed out about a number of things. You know, it ranges from body appearance, like that's a huge one, especially in this time, especially with all the
Sorry, what, you just went a bit fuzzy. What appearance?
Oh, appearance, like body image appearance.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you most of the time, and just every now and again there's a little.
Oh, is
okay,
it?
so body and appearance.
Yep. Yeah. So body image and appearance. You've got also, you know, academics. Girls want to do well, and again, that will depend on the type of school that they are going to. And you've got girls that are stressed out around, you know, their identity and their friendships. You know, where are they at with their friends? And I think as well, another one is just, you know, fitting in is such a big one. And that fear of judgment as well is definitely a huge one. So there's lots of different overlaps as well. So those are just like a range of some of the themes that we're noticing in our workshops.
All right. When I was working a lot with boys and starting out with schools, one of the things we used to say that one of the signs of a mental health issue in boys was acting out. So if we had a boy who was being disruptive and, you know, obviously angry and getting into fights, and, you know, the theory that we would work with is that, you know, there's something going on behind the scenes. And so very often the boys actually identified themselves because of the way they were behaving. Tell me about that when it comes to girls, because I understand it's actually very different.
Yeah, and we've had many conversations about this, and, you know, we've spoken about this. It seems like girls the majority tends to internalize it. So a lot of the time, a lot of girls fly on the radar because, you know, they might not be acting out in class. They might not be the rebellious type, which obviously, you know, that in itself can obviously unlock more in terms of what that type of archetype of a teenage girl is going through. But I think, and, you know, I could speak on this in terms of my experience. You know, I was the quiet, polite, good girl in high school and never wanted to rock the boat. When it came to authority, I was like, okay, I'll just do it all. I'm never going to question it. So I think definitely a lot of girls fly under the radar. And that's the magic of our programs, is that, you know, sometimes teachers become aware of girls that they had never thought of, that in terms of what they were dealing with. And again, it just comes back to emphasizing the importance of creating a safe space and meeting girls where they're at. You know, we don't force girls to speak, you know, tell us what's really going on. It's never that. It's just the essence of that safe space allows girls to choose to step in and actually share, you know, what's going on beneath the surface. So yeah, I think it's a really big conversation. And I think it's so important that just because a girl smiles, it looks like she engages well in class, she's ticking all the boxes, it doesn't necessarily mean that she's got it all together. Like, just a quick story, I went to the supermarket the other day and I bumped into one of my old high school friends. She was in my year level, and I remember her. She was, you know, she got nominated for all the leadership awards. She was a prefect, super smart. You know, she did all of the extracurricular activities, and she found out about the work that I do with Flourish Girl, and she just opened up to me. She said, you know, I actually was struggling a lot. I had anxiety, and, you know, I was really dealing with my identity sexually as well. And I would have never thought never thought that she was going through something. And that's exactly what we see in our workshops. Girls don't realize that maybe the popular girl is going through something tough, or, the quiet girl, or everything in between. So yeah, it's important to pay close attention to that.
Yeah, this expression that you use, flying under the radar, you actually wrote an article about that recently. Is there anything you want to add on? It's a great concept for what unfortunately we're seeing happening with a lot of girls at the moment.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing that I wrote in that article is, I think similar to what I just shared. It's like just, making sure you're not ignoring the fact just because they're ticking all the boxes doesn't mean that they're not going through something. So I think it's just that awareness piece. So yeah, it's very important and something I'm very passionate about.
Great. Thank you for that. Such an important one. And what I'm really clearly hearing from you is, just because a girl seems to be doing well, is quiet or not causing any trouble and getting decent grades and everything like that, and even popular and all of those things, really doesn't mean that she's actually okay on the inside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. And for me, in my interest in rites of passage, which goes back a long way, and for 25 years I've been studying rites of passage all around the world, and I'm interested in that when they created rites of passage for boys and girls, there was a lot of external work that happened with the boys, where they'd have to go out and kill a wild animal or jump off a tower or whatever. But with the girls, more often it was about an internal journey. And it was about the girls, spending time with themselves. And in some of the tribes, the girls, around about exactly the age you're talking about, which is when they're, just hitting puberty, they would spend time on their own, in some form of isolation, with the older women coming and speaking to them. But the aim of it was for the girls to really get in touch with what was going on inside, and then the older women were there and they could talk to them, which is, I find fascinating, especially with what you're describing. So tell me, Mandy, when you run, Flourish Girl programs, I'd love to hear some, a couple of stories about girls who, how do you get these girls to share? How do you get them to open up? What happens in one of your programs?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, such a big question. Okay, so, well, first of all, we're so blessed that, we use the rites of passage framework. So that's something that we use and is embedded into all of our programs, which is amazing. So it's usually a full day program. So what happens is our team of facilitators go in and, there's three main parts of the day. So and again, we have the Flourish Girl journey. So we have a level 1, level 2, level 3 program, but specifically with level 1, because that's all around flourishing with self. Everything starts with self and starting that internal journey. So so in this first level 1 program, there's three main parts of the day. So the first session in the morning, it's all around engaging the girls. So what that looks like is, our team of facilitators, run a bunch of icebreakers. We share stories. Stories is a huge part of the rite of passage framework. And, we allow our facilitators to really lead by example and start to share stories of what life was like for them when they were a teenage girl. And because from a teenage girl's perspective, they see these really they see these older women that look so confident on the outside. So when our facilitators can share, what life was really like for them, there's a sense of those seeds of trust are starting to be built for those teenage girls. So that morning session,
girls are hearing stories of older women.
Yes,
fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's that morning session of engaging the girls, and then after that, and part of that stories as well is we allow girls start to share their story. What's made them who they are today. So often teenage girls feel like, oh, I feel like I haven't lived much life yet, and sure, that's true to some extent, but they've had experiences that have led them to being the person they are today. So we create a safe space for them to start to share stories with their friends. And most of the time, our facilitators ask a question at the end of that, and we ask them, hands up if you've learned something new about someone in your group, and 99% of them always put their hand up. So that's really nice. Again, building these seeds of trust. So that's that morning session. And then we get to the middle part of the day, and you would say like this is the more vulnerable session, but it's all around uprooting any current limitations or blocks. So what that looks like is our facilitators, again, create a safe space, and we share a lot around the concept around judgment, and more specifically self-judgment. So this is where girls get to really go slow, close their eyes, and really be honest with themselves around what's their relationship to self-judgment. And, this is probably, our facilitators do this so well. So what girls do is they end up writing on a Post-it note anonymously, what are some of the things that they say to themselves. And what happens in that moment is we collect the Post-it notes, we put it out on a table, and group by group, they stand up, they look at the Post-it notes, and they sit back down. And, it's truly heartbreaking to see the things that girls are saying. Girls are commenting, they say to themselves, like, you are fat, you are ugly, you're so dumb, you're so stupid. Like, it's really heartbreaking what they say. But in the midst of that, girls start to open up. And, some of the stories that come into this, we had a girl that came into a program, and she looked really confident. She looked like she was the alpha girl. And in that session, she shared that she actually really struggles a lot with her body image, and she constantly looks at other girls in her year level. And our facilitators just threw it to the group and asked, hands up if you have so much love and respect for what Tracy's just said. And everyone's hands go up. And in that moment, Tracy realizes that, she doesn't need to be the loud, charismatic one to feel loved and accepted. She can actually share something that's so deep and vulnerable, yet feel even more loved and connected. So it was a bit of a light bulb moment for Tracy. So so we hear so many stories that come out, whether it's to do with body image, whether it's to do with, success, parental expectations, friends, fitting in. Like, it's really a spectrum of stories we hear time and time again. But the common thing we hear from teenage girls at the end of that session is they say, wow, I feel so much lighter. The fact that I don't need to hold this on me, thinking that I'm alone in this. And it's so nice to know that we're all going through similar things. So that beautifully leads us into the third part, which is the
thing. Let's stop there a moment, because it's such a massive thing for girls to feel lighter and not feel like they're alone. Imagine if every girl in Australia, every girl in the world, could have that experience with their peers. For me, that's a strong step towards creating a really, supportive sisterhood.
Yeah, and it is so powerful, because the magic of our work is that we're not there to teach or preach them around how to be a young woman. It's actually already all there. The wisdom's already there. They all just wanted that safe space to be able to talk about it. And it's quite beautiful at the end of that session. Girls are always hugging each other, and, they have this is like when it was COVID safe, but, like you can just feel the love in the room, and and I remember we did a program, and I remember a girl at the end of that session, she was just like, let's like make a commit. Like, let's just promise that we're just always going to be there for each other. And like, she was like fully wanting to put her hand up. She's like, I'm happy to be the leader in this. And I really want to make this change culture in this. That's pretty much what she was saying. And again, that's because they felt it rather than being told what to do. They felt that themselves.
2 sessions down, 1 to go.
So, that last session's all around flourishing into a powerful woman. So what that actually means is, the thing that they get to in that part of the session is they realize, judgment's there. The reality is these things are going to happen time and time again. And I think that's what I love about our programs. We're not just telling girls, you are worthy, you are loved. Like, we're actually being authentic, being like, you're going to leave here, you're going to leave this classroom, and no doubt there's going to be another self-judgment, a thought that's going to come up, but it's up to you around how you want to show up. So they actually get to create a toolbox of, how can their friends support them? How can their family support them? How can their school better support them? And most importantly, how can they support themselves? It's that level ones are around self-responsibility as well. So they get to create their toolbox. We don't tell them what to do. They create it as a community in the collective, which I really love. And yeah, so then that's the toolbox part. But then the final piece is all around, creating a vision. They're creating a vision of the young woman that they want to become for the rest of the year, or whether this is bespoke and it's for a graduation or something like that. Who do they choose? Who do they want to be moving forward? And that's really powerful, because girls absolutely love writing. You give them pages and they'll just keep writing. So it's all in them. That's the thing. And they get to share that and declare it in front of everyone. And it's actually quite beautiful. And in the midst of that, on the sense of consolidating the community, it's all around honoring. So again, that one of the final parts of a rite of passage, it's really looking at the girls getting honored for their gifts, strengths, and talents to their peers. And not only their peers, but we really encourage girls to share from someone that they might not actually know that well. And it is quite beautiful to see the honorings. I remember there's been times in programs where, one of the best friends stands up and she's trying to give an honoring to her best friend, and she just starts crying, and she couldn't put any words together. And I just remember one of our facilitators saying, like, that in itself is an incredible honoring. So there's just so much love.
Just tell us for a moment, from anyone who doesn't know what an honoring is. It is one of our things in the work that we do, and I'm so happy to hear that it happens at Flourish Girl. But can you just describe what an honoring actually is? And love to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. So an honoring is really when a person, let's say, like, I'm getting honored. So Anna would say something that's a strength, a gift, or a talent of mine that he sees in me, and he would give an example of that. So usually honorings are done verbally. So yeah, in our program specifically, what that looks like is we're usually in a circle, whether it's small groups or a bigger circle, depends on how many girls we have. And we have one girl that we usually have our talking flowers, which I have here, but because it was COVID, we couldn't use them for a while. Anyway, so they used to hold like a bunch of flowers, and the girl holding the flowers would get 2 honorings from 2 other girls in the circle. And their role as the person getting honored, they can't say anything. Like, they can't giggle, they can't laugh, like they can't say thank you, because they're learning how to fully receive, which can sometimes be really awkward for teenage girls. So yeah, it is beautiful though. Every single time there's an honoring, there's always a smile or a little smirk if they're playing it cool, and they just light up.
Yeah, beautiful. And I would just add into that I heard you say it's 2 honorings, which is great, but very important for anybody who's going to do honorings in any scenario, that if there is time and space, and we can go beyond 2 honorings, and
yes,
honorings are a very flexible thing.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And on that as well, because girls absolutely love it. And we had a teenage girl that slid into our DMs on Instagram, and she messaged us saying, oh my gosh, after the session, everyone was texting each other, honoring each other, because we didn't have time to honor everyone. So it's quite beautiful just to see, just the culture, because what we say is, honorings just don't stop here because it's an activity we do in a program. It's something you can continue to foster and grow. So absolutely, definitely, there's always room and time for honorings.
Great. So Mandy, I want to hear more about what you mentioned earlier, where in the 3rd session, the girls get an opportunity to actually create how they can be supported, what they need to be supported. And you talked about that come from friends, family, school, and themselves.
Yes.
If we start with family, what are you hearing girls saying that they are looking for from their families?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's such a spectrum we get girls saying a lot of the time, stop asking me so many questions. And then, and a lot of the time, sometimes, actually, we hear this quite often, is teenage girls are like, oh, they always start off with, when I was your age, and they start to give like a lecture around how to be. So yeah, definitely stop asking so many questions is a really big one. Another one that comes up though in that, which is kind of counterintuitive, is check in on me more and spend more time with me. Don't always be busy with work, like actually spend some quality time with me. And another one that really stands out from a common theme is, I think, in the spending more time, it's actually they want to hear more around, they want to see parents as like a human being too, you know. They want to hear stories. They want to know like what life was like for their parents when they were their age, you know. So I think those are probably the key ones that come to mind.
Right. So they don't want to be lectured.
Yes, they don't want to be lectured.
Story. And do the stories they want to hear just the good stories, or, you know?
I think the general, from what I remember that they were saying, it's really a mix. I think it's a mix of, hearing the rebellious stories, but then also also hearing just like general, like, you know, what was life like for them? What was their relationship like with their parents? And what was life like? What was like the everyday kind of things? I think they want to hear that as well. But it's interesting too, because it's hard, because I don't want people to be listening and doing that and thinking that's going to work, because every teenage girls is going to be different, and it depends on the dynamics of your current relationship too. You know, I've seen parents who have incredibly close relationships with their teenage daughter, to teenage girls that don't want to share. And I think wherever you're at on that journey, it's not judging yourself as a parent because your teenage girl's not opening up. It's being patient. Another one that actually comes up is be patient and know that I'll come to you. So I think if you're just showing up and just being nothing but love and not taking it personally that they might not be opening up, that's okay as well. And sometimes I was speaking to Lil, who's my chairperson of Flourish Girl, and she's got 4 teenagers. So she definitely knows the world of teenagers as well. But, you know, she was saying, what she was saying is 5 key trusted adults, you know, who were other people outside of you and, you know, the parents. Who else could the teenage girl speak with that she could feel safe to talk about? So I think that was a really good tip as well.
So are you saying Lil looks to create 5 trusted adults for each of her children?
I assume she would do that. Seeing that she said Fantastic. That. I don't know if she does it like 5 specifically, but I'm sure.
But just having other adults, trusted adults.
She has other adults, like other girlfriends of hers, and, you know, they all have really good boundaries in terms of, I wouldn't share this with your mom, and it's all very respectful. So, which I really loved that tip. It was really great.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Yeah, and I know with boys, and I believe it's the same with girls, having people other than your parents you can speak to is a really, really important thing. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about schools? What the girls, when they talk about what the schools could do to be more supportive of the girls?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that comes up in our workshops is they want to take more breaks. They feel like they're kind of being pumped through a sausage factory in a way, you know, just they would love to have more breaks, whether it's in home group or your morning groups, where, you know, they can just have a bit of a slowing down and just having space to breathe. I think a lot of the time girls feel like it's just all going so fast. So I think that's a really big theme that comes up. And another one is that they say is they just want teachers to be more understanding and know that sometimes it's like it's more than just the marks and the participation in classrooms. Like they just want more empathy and understanding to know that sometimes they're not going to show up and tick all the boxes. So I think that's the biggest thing that I hear, the theme that we've been hearing from girls.
Yeah. We helped a girls' school in Western Australia design a retreat program that all of their year 9s go on, And one of the strongest pieces of feedback we've got, because we do evaluations, around the program, is the girls just love having downtime.
Yeah.
They're for the duration of the program, they don't have their mobile phones,
Nice.
which they all complain about
Yeah.
greatly on the first day, but by about day 2 or day 3, they actually really are fine with it and get into it, and they just love, as you said, having time where they can just relax, hang out, talk, no agenda. So I'm very interested to hear that you're getting that feedback that the girls just want more of that time.
Definitely. Yeah.
And then I'm interested, what do they tell their friends? They, from a friend's point of view, how do girls want their friends to support them better?
Again, it's such a range of different things. We've got girls that just say, "Oh, I just want a hug." Like they just want love, whether that's like, there's the 5 love languages. So whether it's a hug or whether it's laughing about something funny, whether it's just being an active listener, like not actually trying to solve my problem, but just listening. I think that's a really big one. And sometimes in terms of the fun, having a laugh, I think sometimes girls just want a bit of a distraction from how they're actually feeling. And I think sometimes that's okay, as long as they know that they need to come back to whatever they're feeling as well. So that's another theme. Yeah, I think it's like going out together, having fun experiences together, and just letting them know that I'm not always going to, like, just giving permission to not always need to be happy. I think that's a really big one. And also respecting when they need space, because I think that's another one which we start to tap more into our level 2 program, around saying no and setting boundaries, because girls are so loving towards their friends. They would never want to hurt them, and they think saying no or not committing to something is going to hurt someone. So yeah, it's a big one, but those are some of the themes that tend to come out.
Yeah. And the last one on this is for themselves. What do girls talk about for themselves that they do better?
Yeah. I think a really big one is journaling. They feel like spending more time with themselves is really good. Again, listening to music or dancing, doing something they love, like pursuing a new hobby, something that will kind of take their mind off like the things that are going on in their everyday life. I think that's been that would definitely be another one. What else? Top of my head, I would say those are the main things. And like running or doing something active, doing a sport. I think definitely movement is a really big one. And yeah, those are the main ones that I can think of right now.
Yeah. I'm very interested in the journaling. I've spoken to a lot of girls who, or older women who described that they had a period of time in their teenage years where they would journal and do drawings and all of that. And back on the whole rites of passage, the stuff that I've studied, where often the girls would be put inside a hut or even a hollow tree for a period of time to go through that journey. And then the story I'd like to share is that I have a stepdaughter, and when she was about 15, 16, her room, which is upstairs, has like a little attic part of it, which is about the size of a large cupboard. And she used to go into that room, and she had it all set up with pillows and
That's so nice.
on the walls, and she would journal and do drawings. And I realized that she didn't get the rite of passage where she went into the hut or the tree, but something inside her told her to actually go and do that. And her mother used to go up the stairs, and she wasn't allowed to go into the room, but she had to sit outside and even just sort of put a foot in and have some connection and bring food up. But my stepdaughter really spent a significant amount of time in the room on her own, listening to her music, and it was actually a very important sort of safe place for her during these years that you're describing. That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it?
It's beautiful.
I'm very interested in how fathers can support girls.
Mm.
And, I have a stepdaughter, and I do a lot of work with men, and we've recently run some Zoom father-daughter evenings.
Oh, I
And
saw
they're
that. Yeah.
incredibly well attended. We got a lot more people than we would have expected. In fact, we did one. We're working with Pimba Ladies College in Sydney, which is fantastic. And we actually had over 2 nights, 500 fathers and daughters on these Zoom calls. And yeah, it was so beautiful. And we talked about, the strategies for parents. This one was for fathers as to what they can do with their daughters. And we talked about 7 strategies. And anybody who's interested in getting a copy of these 7 strategies can send an email to the Rites of Passage Institute. We'll put the link up at some stage, and we're happy to send you out a copy. But in a nutshell, some of the things we talk about specifically for fathers is to find, the first one is find something one-on-one that you and your daughter enjoy doing, but that you both enjoy, and to do it and to turn your mobile phone off. So make time and hopefully start young, and then see if you can find something that keeps going, and the sorts of things. And we got them to spend a bit of time talking about things they like to do together. And they came up with ideas like walking the dog, listening to music together, playing board games, reading. There was 1,000 different ideas, going away somewhere. Actually, the best one of all that I heard was a father contacted me up and said, my daughter wrote down what she wanted to do, and she stuck it on my desk at home, and the daughter had written, "Let's get lost together."
Oh,
yeah, how fantastic! The daughter, just go and do something, and get lost. Mobile phone. I thought that was particularly beautiful. Anyway, so that was the first one: finding something one-on-one together. The other thing that I recommended to fathers is to share stories with, as you talked about, with the girls about when they were that age, and stories about things that they did and important people in their lives, and that went well, but also times when things didn't go so well. So that exactly as you said, the daughters saw their fathers as humans who were teenagers once as well. We talked about that something happens in the family, or we see something on the news or on TV or in the street or whatever, that as fathers, we first of all ask our daughters what they think about it and their
nice
before we tell them what we think and what we believe. The next one was when our daughters have a problem, that we see if we can help them to work out the solution themselves rather than us just take over and fixing it all for them. So we're there, we can help them, but see if it can come out from them. And the last one that I'll mention tonight for fathers is that when daughters do something wrong or make a mistake or misbehave or anything, that we separate the person from the behaviour. So the worst thing that we can ever do to a girl of any age is to shame her and tell her that she's no good, she's useless, she's bad, any of those things. And critically important it is that our daughters know that we love them no matter what, but the behaviours that we don't do, so we need to talk about the behaviour and work out what we're going to do. And then we actually got all the fathers to share with their daughters something they did when they were teenagers that wasn't okay, that their daughter doesn't yet know about, which was very, very
that would
beautiful.
be fun. Yeah.
So, I think that the whole approach to supporting our girls to flourish has to absolutely come from programs like what you're doing. But as you said, it has to come also ideally from the whole community, which means their friends, their families, mothers and fathers, schools, as many different directions as we can.
Yeah, I totally. And just to add to that too, I find like even in our programs, we're technically going in for the girls, but it's incredible the amount of times that it's healing for the teachers. The teachers open up, and then there is so much more love and respect for that teacher. And it's, and especially for teachers in the last 2 years, they've gone through a lot and they're holding so many people. And it's so incredible because time and time again, students just feel so much more connected to the teachers because they might have gotten emotional or they actually share that they're stressed out. Even the words "I'm stressed out" from a teacher or a parent, like that's incredible. And I know there's been a time where I think we ran a mother-daughter I ran a mother-daughter circle out in Yarram a few years ago, and I remember there was actually a mother-daughter pair, and the daughter quickly went to the toilet, and the mum started to share. She's like, "I can't share this with my daughter, but I'm feeling really stressed out and just dealing with a lot." And it's really it's just really interesting. You know, I'm not a parent, so I don't understand the world of being a mum yet, but just just the power that could be created if the daughter was there to hear that. You know, what dynamic and path could have opened up for that relationship. So yeah, it can be vulnerable, but it's really beautiful when you get to create together and get lost together.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, because as we work more and more in schools, the question comes up as to whether this sort of work that we're doing and that you're describing should be outsourced to people who come in, work with the girls for however long, and then leave, or whether we can actually engage the staff, and not all the staff, because this is not for everyone, but whether it's actually okay for staff to share their stories and their vulnerabilities. And slowly, we are gaining action where people, staff and schools are realizing that if we want to create a sense of belonging for the girls, that means building community. And the school community is the girls, the staff, the families, and one of the most powerful ways of creating community and being able to support is actually what we've talked about and named so many, which is sharing genuine, vulnerable stories.
Yeah. And like, how awesome would it be if a teacher said, "Oh, I actually feel a bit nervous to share this with you all because I know I'm the teacher, but I'm feeling quite stressed out right now." Like, how incredible would that be? That is just so refreshing. Just, I know as a teenage girl, hearing that from a teacher, it just really creates, and they're leading by example. So I think that would just be amazing.
Yeah,
Definitely needed more.
we're trying to introduce into classrooms check-ins. So
Nice.
a check-in doesn't have to be. It's not about doing it every day or every lesson, but whether it's once a week or once a month, where those in the class get a chance to check in. Which we have a model called a golden check-in, GOLDEN. G for how am I going overall. O, what have I been occupied with and doing. L, is there anything I've liked recently? D, is anything difficult happening? E is what am I excited about that's coming up? And N, is there anything I'm nervous about or any support I need? And consistently we find that when we do check-ins and create it, as you've talked about so often, a safe space, and people are able to check in, it's actually a beautiful and powerful community building, for the individual and for the community. And when we get teachers in there, and they can actually share how they're going, what they've been doing, what they've liked, anything that's been difficult, what they're excited about, and if they're anything they're nervous or need some support around, that's real community building. And and hopefully that's something that we can actually normalize, because at the moment it's really not normal. And at the moment it's really like, wow, how radical. I actually tell someone how I'm going. And possibly, I reckon, one of the reasons we have as many issues as we're seeing in young girls is, as you've said, everything's internalized and we're not sharing.
Yeah, definitely. And even on that too, and something I'm noticing more in schools is there isn't, I know there's a conversation around sex ed, but there isn't a lot around periods. Like I remember in high school, it was you get a tampon or a pad, or I mean, there was moon cups back then, and you just learn to deal with it. But there is, like, how beautiful would it be if there was a circle created where like female staff members could share a bit more about their experience when they had their period. I remember the first time I got my period, I thought I was dying because I didn't know that periods was a thing. Like I just got it, but thankfully my sister, like my older sister, she's like, oh, you got your period, Nungi, and Nungi means little sister in Sinhalese. But yeah, I'm like, oh, that would be amazing if teachers could create that space or just that conversation is had.
Yeah. Well, look, it's an exciting time in terms of I think more and more schools are and people are coming on board with this idea that there's so much more we can and in fact should be doing. I believe we have a responsibility when we look at the levels of mental health issues amongst girls, and it's exciting to think that there are so many changes from programs like what you're doing and other organisations, including us at the Rite of Passage Institute and many others, are looking to bring into the culture of how we raise our girls. The other thing that I'm very interested in girls, and I guess you mentioned, but I just want to name it one more time, is this idea that so many of these girls have this narrative running, and that if they don't actually get to talk about their beliefs about themselves, if they don't get to get in touch with those beliefs, the risk is that they will leave school, go out into the world, and still have those beliefs of themselves, and that's going to affect the decisions that they make and the relationships that they go into, and it's going to actually hold them back, and these girls that we're talking about have such incredible potential and are so wonderful and amazing. And, my hope is that if we can be doing this work that you're doing with them whilst they're still at school, then by the time they leave school, they have a good awareness of themselves and they have good skills and they have, find friends and support people and they can go out there and engage with the world, change the world and bring their gifts and their talents and their genius and their spirit out of their communities.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think just to add to that as well, I think a lot of girls, there's that world of, it's such a cliche, but the world of perfectionism, there's this subconscious mindset for a lot of girls feeling like they need to be a certain way and tick all the boxes before they can progress to the next stage. But, just being able to dismantle that and know that, hey, there actually is no perfect way to do your journey. Like your journey is your journey and you can just continue to walk that and know that there's people around you supporting you and seeing you for who you are. And also normalizing that it's okay if you have days that you don't feel like you don't feel as confident as you did before. Like, I think it's part of the confidence comes from being able to own when you're not feeling confident or you feel like crap, I think that's normalizing those conversations is actually going to unlock so much in the girls that you're around as well.
Oh, so true. I heard for the first time a couple of months ago the expression toxic perfectionism. And as a man, we hear about toxic masculinity and everything so often, and we've been sort of really exploring into that. But this idea that perfectionism can actually be toxic and create so many problems, and when it's set up there as the expectation, it creates this massive anxiety because as soon as I've done something perfectly, I then have to do the next thing perfectly and the next thing and the next thing, and it's impossible. And yeah, so definitely. If someone could go around and share stories with every girl out there about this idea that perfectionism is just not a sustainable or reasonable desire or outcome, that it is real, I think that itself would create a huge difference.
100%.
Now, Mandy, we're going to put the link to your website, Flourish Girl, in the chat. But just for those who are listening, can you what is your website, Mandy?
What was that?
What is your website? We'll put in the link.
Oh, my website. I think you said, what's your weather? And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting question.
No, Mandy, website.
So the website for Flourish Girl is www.flourishgirl.org. So that's where you can find us.
Flourishgirl.org.
And we're on social media too, but all of the above.
Great. And Melissa is already doing weekly programs, which is fantastic. And we would love to see programs for girls just happening all over the place. And there are many people who've come through the Rites of Passage Institute leadership training now, who are running programs for girls around Australia and around the world, which is something we're very proud of, but we feel like we've only just begun. And our website is the Rites of Passage Institute.org. Rites of Passage with rites spelled R-I-T-E-S. So if you're interested in our work, please come and have a look. And we've got big shout out at the end here to Megan from Coffs Harbour, and my friend Marcus, who's excited to hear about work with daughters, given that he's got a 9-year-old daughter. And Marcus, we have Agnes Icing in the Netherlands, who's running some fantastic mother and daughter programs, so I can help you to get in touch with her. And as we come to the end of our time, Mandy, I just want to honour you for remember, you're not allowed to say anything. You're not even allowed to giggle or laugh, I heard you say. I just want to honour you for the amazing work that you've done and the huge number of girls who you've influenced by just being yourself and sharing your stories. On top of that, all the women that you've trained up to work with you and the incredible work that they're doing, the bravery that it would have been to move from, a set career into something that in your heart and spirit you knew was right for you to do. And I also want to honour you for the fact that your attitude is this is just the beginning, and that you have a huge desire to see this work really, really spread as widely as possible. And also, you're a great friend, and I love every time I get to talk with you or meet with you and your beautiful husband, Yo, who's also a great friend. So, Mandy, thank you for being you. And for everyone who's been listening, thank you. And we'll be running these sessions as often as we can, and every time we can find someone really fabulous to speak to. So thank you, everyone, and lots of love and good night.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, Anna, for that honouring. And thank you for all the work that you're doing as well to spread this work into the mainstream. So, yeah. And yes, thank you for everyone tuning in. Lots of love.
All right. Good night, everybody.